Welcome to the Cardinal News of Virginia, a podcast from Cardinal News. We're a nonprofit independent newsroom serving Southwest and Southside Virginia at cardinalnews.org. I'm Dutchie Jessee. Today's sponsor is Garland Properties, with the Rail Walk Apartments now open in Pulaski, Virginia. Garland Properties is building healthy communities. Well, April is a very busy month for Virginia politics, and who better to talk with about that than our own Dwayne Yancey, founding editor of Cardinal News and longtime political reporter and columnist. Hi, Dwayne.
April's going to be lit.
April is going to be lit. That's one way to put it. So let's get right to it. So this podcast is dropping in early April. We have several important key dates coming up, so we'll take them, as the calendar, from a calendar perspective. April 13th is right around the corner. That is the last day for the governor to act on legislation. What did we see out of this year's session? I mean, we don't have all day, but what are the highlights of some things that passed or didn't pass this session?
There's a whole lot that passed.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a whole lot that didn't pass. First, let's sort of talk about the process for folks who aren't up to speed, because Virginia operates differently than the federal government. The governor of Virginia has several options on what to do with the bills before. She can sign them, they become law, she can veto them, or she can send them back to the General Assembly for revisions. Mm-hmm. That's what we really want to look for. I would be shocked if there were any vetoes, given that you have a governor and General Assembly of the same party. Mm-hmm. Certainly on the big stuff, we're not going to see any vetoes. If there are vetoes, it will be on something small and technical we haven't paid attention to that, has some technical problem with it. But more likely, there will be a bunch of bills sent back. That always happens. Think of it, we're journalists, so when we think of, stories being turned in and being edited, much the same thing with bills. They are passed, they were written and passed in haste. And so what is happening now is the governor and her team of lawyers and policy advisors are going through all these bills, looking not just at the policy implications, which in many cases are known and the governor may be supportive of, but were they written the right way? Do they list all the different offices that need to be mentioned? That sort of technical thing. So there are always a lot of technical amendments. The several areas where I would keep an eye open for policy-related amendments. One big one is cannabis.
Right.
General Assembly passed a bill to legalize retail sales of cannabis. The governor has said she would sign that. But there are lots of little details there that, may or may not be troublesome.
Okay, so before we go on with that, let's remind people of this weird limbo that Virginia is in with regards to cannabis.
Yes, we're in sort of a gray haze, not because of smoke.
Right.
Just, the gray haze of the law.
Right.
Virginia appears to be the only state where you can possess legally small amounts of cannabis, but you can't buy it. So it's like saying you can have a jug of milk, but unless you have your own cow, you can't go to the store and buy it.
Right. So all these people, just to clarify, because people have seen Rise and other dispensaries, if that's the right word, popping up. So what are those?
Those are medical marijuana.
Okay.
For which you have to have a prescription. What we're talking about now is recreational cannabis. Yeah. Cannabis is the preferred term. In my days, it was marijuana or
weed.
Pot.
Yeah,
weed,
Mary Jane.
Weed's a good word. I like weed.
Yeah.
Devil's lettuce and jazz cabbage are good for
We could go on and on.
We could. Is one of the questions with the cannabis legislation is when it takes effect. Mm-hmm. And the General Assembly haggled over dates, settled on January the 1st. There are now some people, cannabis activists, advocates, urging a later date, which might seem odd when they want it as soon as possible. But their argument is the timeline by which a someone could gain license to operate a retail store and go into business is not enough time to grow a crop.
Right.
And so the only people who will have product will be the medical marijuana companies, which is fine with the medical marijuana companies, but there are cannabis advocates who want to create a space for small entrepreneurs, and they're saying, well, they need more time to grow their crop if they're going to get into the market. So, looking for things like that with the cannabis bill. There may be other details too, but that's sort of the big one that is bubbled up.
Okay. Another big item in this year's assembly was gaming, what we used to call gambling, basically, but gaming, casinos, and the like. So let's talk about that and where it landed.
Sure. Some gaming, go with the preferred term, legislation passed. Legalizing so-called skill games, those electronic games you see at convenience stores. Fairfax was added to the list of localities eligible for a casino.
Did that sail through? I remember reading some
back
and forth on that.
Through.
Yeah.
There was a lot of back and forth. Let's just say it passed.
Okay. Yeah.
Sailed conjures up,
ease.
Ease.
Yeah.
Yes, it did not pass with ease. Something that failed, technically was put off a year, was creation of a gaming commission. There are those who think, well, if we're going to have all this gaming, we need a formal commission. Right now, things are regulated either through the lottery or,
Right, because there's a state lottery commission.
Yes.
But not a gaming commission.
Correct. I could see, I don't know her thoughts, but I could see the governor saying, well, wait a minute, if we're going to pass all this, we need a formal gaming commission. The trick with any amendment, Virginia is very strict about how bills are written. In Congress, they have these huge omnibus bills. It doesn't matter. You can put anything in a federal omnibus bill, and they do. Virginia is much more, I would say, efficient. Every bill, you can only have a single purpose, and it's up to ultimately the speaker, the presiding officer in the Senate to decide what is germane, and they get into some interesting parliamentary disputes about what is germane. But anytime the governor is sending back an amendment, it has to be attached to the right bill. So there is some art of both law and politics involved there. So if, say, the governor wanted a gaming commission, she would have to find the right bill in the gaming universe to attach it to. Now, she may not.
Right.
But that's something to look for.
Okay, so cannabis, gaming, and then we are hearing so much, and we're hearing this nationally too, the conversation about energy costs, and you can't really talk about that without talking about data centers, and this is especially in Virginia these days. So what happened in the session?
Big picture, there were some data center bills that passed, but not as many as some people wanted.
Okay.
Those who would be the most critical of data centers, shall we say, were disappointed that there wasn't what they would consider stronger regulation. Those on the other side of the question obviously disagreed. All of that is very technical. I can see lots of technical amendments coming back from the governor. And of course, just to jump ahead to the other thing at play is the state budget, which the legislature adjourned without passing a budget.
Right.
And the main reason they didn't was dispute over data centers.
Right. Now, is this the specific, attempt by Senator Louise Lucas with regards to ending the data center revenue, the breaks in 2028 instead of waiting till 2035? Am I thinking of the right
2027.
Okay,
yes,
20. Okay,
yes.
So get into that. Explain that for us, because Senator Louise Lucas is very powerful.
She is. Let's go back in time.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a time we had no idea what a data center was.
Right. It wasn't even all that long ago,
wasn't that
Dwayne.
long
I mean,
ago.
it wasn't in the conversation the way it is
Right.
now.
In 2008, Virginia passed its first bill related to data centers. I don't know how many we had at that time, but not many. Nobody really knew what they were. It was a specific tax incentive for data centers to locate in economically distressed areas. In fact, the very first iteration of that bill applied only to Mecklenburg County.
Okay.
It was, through the process, it expanded to economically distressed areas. 2 years later, General Assembly came back and made it statewide. The goal was to create a technology sector in Virginia, and this was seen as the way to do it. The economic impact of that in the formal fiscal report was listed as unknown. Well, now we know. Each year, in the past year, the state has estimated that it passed up $1.9 billion in tax revenue from data centers. Now, some people look at that as a giveaway, other people look at that as a bargain. The giveaway argument is, look at all these data centers, they're getting this tax break. Here's 1.9 billion we're not taxing them for that we could. The bargain argument is, well, you really need to measure that 1.9 billion in tax abatement against the 9.1 billion gross domestic product that data centers produce in Virginia. So whether you see it as a giveaway or a bargain sort of separates you on different sides. That, whatever you call it, that particular tax incentive is set to expire in 2035. Senator Louise Lucas, the very powerful chair of the Senate Finance Committee, wants it to be ended next year. She sees lots of tax revenue that can be collected, and sees all these data centers and think, they don't need them anymore. It's a mature industry. The argument against that is, well, wait a minute, Virginia would be breaking its word. Companies make investment decisions based on when they thought this tax incentive was going to expire. If we change the rules, that not only has implications for them, but sends a bad signal to other business sectors that Virginia's word can't be trusted.
Okay. So the budget didn't pass based on pretty much a hang up on that.
Pretty much it. House and Senate are controlled by the same party. House and Senate disagree. House wanting to keep these tax incentives at least through 2035. Senate, led by Senator Lucas, one gone, next year. And they were at such odds that basically for the past week there were no budget negotiations, and they left without a budget. They are now looking at other ways to do things. The data center industry has apparently floated what some are calling a consumption tax. This would be a tax on the amount of electricity that they use. So basically, somewhere behind the scenes, there are discussions about, okay, you're going to have to pay some more money. How is this going to happen, in what format and what vehicle and all of that. So that is where we are now. But you obviously can't put together a budget till you know how much money you have.
Right.
One, just stating the obvious, but also paraphrasing what Senator Creed Deeds, Democrat from Charlottesville, one of the budget negotiators, said. Once they resolve that, the other differences between the House and the Senate are more, what I would say, more normal budget disputes.
So they got to figure it out, though, because they have to be able to pass the budget.
Yes.
So April 13th, April 21st is a big day that people are seeing on signs everywhere they look, and in their mailbox and on ads, it's actually a special election, technically, right? But it's really the redistricting referendum. Now, We're not going to get into a ton of detail here because we have an entire podcast coming up on that where we're looking at reader questions and answering some basics. But April 21st, early voting has begun. We know it's unprecedented for us to have a referendum on this in April when there's not something else happening that people would go to the polls for. So we've mentioned this in a previous podcast, but what are we expecting, and have you been able to glean any real insights based on early voting so far?
So far, based on the early voting trends, we're looking, I'll say two things. One, we're looking at turnout probably about the size of the governor's race in November.
Okay. Well,
Which is amazing.
you mean early voting turnout so far?
Yes.
Okay.
Which suggests the overall turnout
Sure.
will be the same.
Okay.
Or maybe even a little higher. That is wild. Because as you point out, we've never had a special election for a constitutional amendment.
At some random time, like April.
We've always had it, November as part of a general election. So, people aren't accustomed to voting this time of year, but, they're turning out at the same rate or maybe a little higher than, last year in November. So, people are definitely engaged. Point two, and I would be very careful with this, so far, the early turnout has been higher in Republican areas than Democratic areas. That has given great hope to Republicans on the no side and is causing some worry on the Democratic side, the yes side. I would just caution, things can change.
Yeah.
The percentage of votes cast already, while there have been a lot of votes cast, percentage-wise, we're certainly not at 100% yet. So, I'm certainly not going to sit here and predict an outcome. I will just point out, right now the heaviest voting congressional districts are the ones represented by Republicans, and the lowest voting congressional districts are the ones represented by Democrats.
Right. Well, take that for what it's worth this early. But I would also be remiss if I didn't remind people they can see the maps. They can see, current districts and then the proposed new districts at cardinalnews.org, specifically in our voter guide. And that's a very useful tool that we specifically designed just to be of good use to people looking for just factual information. And of course, Dwayne, you follow all of this throughout our coverage, but in your Friday newsletter, West of the Capitol. And one of the things you do is kind of follow up with early voting, how it's going so far, what we're seeing so far. And that's really interesting too. It's free, just like all of our newsletters. So to finish up this discussion, we've got what we tend to call the veto session. It's the April 22nd.
Yeah, that week is going to be just a fun week for political junkies.
Yeah.
We may not have that much fun.
You're going to be staying up later than usual.
But Tuesday, April 21st, election day for the special election. Wednesday, April 22nd, the reconvene session, what we typically call the veto session, legally the reconvene session. Because like I said, there may not be any vetoes, but there will be lots of amendments and so forth. And then Thursday, April 23rd, is a special session to deal with the budget.
Yeah.
What we don't know yet is when we will see a budget. Legislators have to have it 48 hours before they vote on it. In the old days, they would just plop down a budget and say, hey, we're going to vote in 10 minutes. You're supposed to vote yes. Well, for some reason, legislators, wanted to actually read the thing.
Surely not.
So they have to have it out 48 hours before. And so, we don't know yet where the progress is or what amount of progress. So, it could be we get a budget, on election day on the 21st. I mean, I hope not, because that's just too much to cover at one time.
Between you and Elizabeth and our staff. It's
Or
a
it could
lot.
be, come April 23rd, they're still haggling and it
Yeah.
goes for several days as, deals are made
Wouldn't
and
be the
so
first
forth.
time.
It
Yeah.
will not be the first time,
Yeah.
but we've just got that week blocked off. Like, man, that is,
Okay, that sounds good. And we will thank you in advance for the coverage because it's a lot to keep up with, but we really appreciate it. Dwayne Yancey is our founding editor at Cardinal News. And Dwayne, how can people get a hold of you quickly and easily if they have something to run by you?
Dwayne at cardinalnews.org, DWAYNE.
All right.
We were all first name at cardinalnews.org.
Super easy. So thank you so much. I want to thank everyone for listening to the Cardinal News of Virginia. Thanks to our sponsor, Garland Properties. Thank you, Sean Eddy of Eddy Alexander, for your production assistance, and to Cardinal's own Zach Shelton. We're always paywall free at cardinalnews.org. Thanks for listening. I'm Dutchie Jessee.